It's just so rewarding, but yet satisfying. But then you can have your moments when you're like, oh my God, what am I doing to myself? But I'll never change a thing, because I feel that this is what I'm here for.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. French cookery is the basis for many chefs' careers. The building blocks of sauces, cooking techniques, often providing a platform for the exploration of their own voice on the plate. In Australia, French technique has been pivotal in different eras and continues to provide that foundation. Andy Ashby is the chef and owner of C'est Bon in Brisbane. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, well. Thanks for asking there, Huck.
It's been a pretty crazy period of time, and you've got a really successful establishment there. How are things going in Brisbane?
Yeah, it's Brisbane's a bit of a funny one in the sense that, 10 years ago it was a little bit down, and it wasn't really seen as a bit more of a food precinct in Australia, but how the tides have turned due to vast different circumstances. But things are booming. Things are really looking very strong in Brisbane scene, and all we need now is that, like everyone, is staff.
Well, Woolloongabba is an interesting part of Brisbane. It's almost like a mini French Quarter there. Tell us a bit about sort of where you are.
Yeah, the Gabba, it'll be, I guess, leading the charge very soon with the acceptance of the Olympics coming up. It's growing. It's got a lot of heritage and history around us, and there's a lot more further development in terms of more food-orientated businesses popping up left, right and centre, close to South Bank, West End, and obviously on the other side of the river from the soon-to-be casino and James Street there. So when you just said French precinct, we're growing that at current. So whilst we've been through that storm, there's an amazing light at the end of the tunnel to develop it and get it to be such a unique spot for people to come and enjoy.
A couple of decades ago, French was really leading the charge in Australia, and then Asian countries and their amazing cuisine sort of really took charge and added further colour, and French sort of took a step back. You're exploring French cuisine in your own way. What's the interest for you there?
For me, I guess it delvages through the story and how I got here, but I like, everyone's got the backbone, like you said in the intro, of having that classical techniques and the heart of gastronomy coming from French cuisine. So it's now taking those key skills as a young apprentice back in New Zealand and adding value to tell a story using localized produce here at C'est Bon. So whilst we don't do the traditional, a fair bit of traditional stuff like the souffle on the plate and the crepe Suzette in front of you, we've got our own means and ways to take the techniques and utilize local produce to tell you a story in the restaurant. And I think because there's so many good French restaurants out there, we have to find a way to diversify and teach the staff at hand, but also educate the customer that comes into C'est Bon that we are French, but we've just taken a slightly different route to get to where we want to be.
I want to explore what you are doing, but you mentioned New Zealand. Take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family?
It was, I guess, like a lot of chefs, wanting to be a chef growing up, started super young, cooking with grandma at her place, doing those Sunday roasts on the beach. I'm a scuba diver, so going to get the scallops out the back of Waiheke Island to just getting that hunger and the drive and the thirst to go, okay, maybe I'm not that good at the old the maths, and I'm not going to be a lawyer anytime soon. So going to follow my heart in the direction and just get head down, bum up, and get straight into those pans in the dish pit at the start, and kickstart that journey of becoming an apprentice, and learn it through the right ways. And that just started to grow from the young age of 17 all the way through to where I am now. But I left New Zealand. Well, I got kicked out of the door, to be honest. My old boss, who's coming to my wedding in 3 weeks' time, he said, look, New Zealand's too small. We've got more sheep than what we have humans here. The food scene is not as good as it is now, and there's some amazing restaurants over there now, which we're very fortunate to have. He goes, you need to go and see the bigger, wider world. And I said, okay. Being a young 21-year-old, I was like, right, where do we go to first? And it was straight over to Melbourne. And I was blessed because I was lucky enough to meet and be mentored by the one and only Scott Pickett. And the first question I remember him asking me in our little old Albert Park there at the Point restaurant was, what AFL team do you support? And being a little bit of a cheeky Kiwi, I was like, we don't support that, mate. You know, it's all about rugby in New Zealand. He goes, no, honestly, who are you going to support? And I remember seeing a sign coming from the Tullamarine Airport into the CBD there going, yeah, Collingwood, you know, go up Collingwood. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to say Collingwood and see how Scotty takes it. And he's like, yep, you got an interview and you got a trial tomorrow. So get your shit together and we'll see you in the kitchen at 8 a.m. So I guess sorry, back to the lead part of it. It's always been in my blood. It's always been a passion and desire to create and be proud of something. And still to this day, through the whole journey of life to where we are, that's still the end goal. The end goal is not to make a hell of a load of money, because I'll be kidding myself to think that that's what hospo's about. It's to make people smile, and that's what we're getting at the moment, and that's rewarding in itself.
Those first couple of years in the industry in New Zealand, do you have any stories of what it was like for you just starting off to learn your craft? Yeah,
look, long hours and thinking, what am I doing? Like, I was working out in they call it Ohakia, which is an Air Force base, as a young apprentice, a part of a group called Australis, I think. I think it was called Australis. Anyway, and just those long hours doing things that I didn't think was necessarily part of becoming a chef or a restaurateur or that. But then, I don't know, you just got to do it until you're blue in the face, and then you got given another chance to flare and shine and prove yourself. And it's just a lot of blood, sweat and tears, and being dedicated to the food scene and wanting to create. I honestly, in New Zealand, it's a bit of a blur to where I am now. Maybe it's just the age kicking in, but I was just remembering all those good times, running amok. Obviously, like everyone, beers with the boys after work, and just being a little shit, I guess. And before I had to wake up because I was in another country and I was having to fend for myself, where the bigger stories come a little bit more to light than New Zealand, to be honest.
Scott Pickett is a real larrikin, but his influence is incredible, and his skills are off the charts. All the chefs that we've spoken to that have worked with him. Well, tell us what your experiences were working with Scott.
Incredible, and I vouch for a lot of friends that have worked under him or next to him at the helm. To see how he's motivated himself, his family, and his businesses, and I still keep in touch with him now. Is just he's a mentor. He's so inspirational to see going through the whole COVID thing and what he came to be and to drive and just keep pushing, and that's true blessing to be able to work with a guy like that. My time at the Point was it was long hours, it was big, it was bold, but I would not change that for a thing. And I know obviously how Fair Work and things have played out, and a lot of the industry's changed, but I learned so much. I had so much fun. I remember the first week I was getting chased around by Scott with a tomahawk steak because I didn't have the cuisson quite right, and you know, but that's stories they're going to last with me for a lifetime. And working with amazing guys like Ben Rashley and Dan on the pastry side, and you know, we were all working for the same goal, and that was it was just amazing. The only thing was quite funny and still sticks in my mind is we had this little tallied chart in the little hot box, we used to call it, of the pastry section, and it was how many chefs were losing per year. So we had all these foreigners come in, and it was awesome. New blood, new skill sets, and some would chase the money, and some would say they're from a Michelin restaurant, but they couldn't hack the heat of the kitchen that Scotty would in detail. And by the end of it, Huck, I reckon we went through about 65 chefs in the space of a year, which is incredible. But it made people a bit more resilient and a bit more stronger. And when you did have your time there, and when I was leaving, Justin Wise was coming in, and Emil, who has an amazing restaurant in Sydney, and Scotty had just gone out to do his own thing with Estelle, and I wanted to follow him there, but I sort of got picked off by an amazing opportunity to go on to Hamilton Island at Qualia.
You mentioned the move to Australia and that yearning to sort of learn more, and that you were almost sort of kicked out by your old boss to go and learn more. What was it like for you, like arriving in Melbourne and experiencing that culinary scene in that kitchen? Was it a big difference? Yeah,
a huge difference. Like I was head chef at a bistro back in a little place called Palmerston North in New Zealand there, and I'm so thankful to my mentor back in New Zealand by the name of Steve Kelly, that he said, look, he sat me down and goes, boy, listen to me, right? You may have been head chef here, and I've given you a golden opportunity as a young 18-year-old to run my little bistro. But when you get over to Australia, you go over there, you be modest, you be humble, you listen, you shut up when you need to shut up, and you go over there and you don't bloat that you're a head chef at a bistro, because none of those Australians are going to care about that. They want to know that you can work, you got good knife skills, and you got good work morals. And I to that day, I'm very thankful for that sit down chat, because I went over there and I got went over to see Scott, and I said, look, I'm just applying I think I applied for a CDP role, and I said, right. He just said, jump in the kitchen and see what you can do. So if I went over there with the polar opposite and I said, I'm a head chef, mate, chuck me under the pans, I just would have been absolutely skilled alive like a fish. So the learning side, I think the hardest thing, honestly, was the finding a house to live was probably the most tougher thing. I was more scared about the change of environment from being in a small local area in New Zealand to being in a big hustle and bustle of Melbourne. But it's kind of reminded me a little bit like a Wellington on steroids. Like, it had this really gorgeous environment about it. People were really happy at the time. There was always something to do. There was always somewhere to go out after work. And it was just an amazing, incredible experience to be in such a really busy, bustling part of Australia. So I love my time there.
You mentioned an opportunity on Hamilton Island. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I had a good mate of mine from New Zealand who came over, tried to do the Melbourne thing like I did. Didn't have as much success. He was working in Lygon Street, and he must have been on the Seek engine that not a lot of people use anymore, to be honest. And he's seen an advert going, go and work at Reefview and in Hamilton Island. And he goes, mate, you should give it a go, eh? I can see the hours you're doing with Scotty. Like, things are changing there. Just apply. Just see what you got. And Qualia were looking for some CDPs to come and join the brigade over there. And I thought, well, I probably need a bit more sun on the old white arms. Let's give this a crack. And got the interview, got the job, and before you know it, was literally, I think it was about 2 weeks after I had finished at the point. No time to rest on the laurels and rest the bones. It was straight into another gig, working in an extremely interesting but diverse place, being Qualia, and an experience that I definitely wouldn't change for the world, because I made amazing new friends. We went through probably about the same amount of chefs, to be honest, because it was you fly them in, they say they're this, they say they're that, and then you get them under the bit of pressure under the pans. And we had an amazing Scottish chef by the name of Ali Waddell, who's led the charge at Harvest, and now he's kicking goals at Freda Fields just out of Byron there. And he was Michelin trained, but he was almost in the same precinct as Scotty. He was a grinder. He would do things old school, and he would do it the proper way. And if you weren't on the same boat as him, my God, you get out of the way real quick because the Paco jet was coming past your face very, very fast. He had this vein that used to pop out the side of his his right corner of his head, and you knew that you'd run for the hill if that vein was coming up because things were going pear-shaped. But an incredible learning experience because he picked the ones that he could spend a bit more time and energy with, and mentor and coach and give face value and bring us to who I am today, to be honest. So two incredible mentors that have helped coach me to get where I am at the moment.
Well, what was life like on Hamilton Island, and also the job? Was it different being in that commercial kitchen to say, like restaurants in Melbourne? Yeah,
it is. You got everyone that goes to Qualia was part of Relay and Chateau properties across the world, so it had a really it was 5-star rated. It really had a true belief that it was the creme of the creme, and so we tried to displace that in the food and the showmanship that we had. The environment actually on the island itself is you soon learned to behave yourself pretty quickly. Because it's so small, and that took a little bit for me to understand. We had what do you call it, local pubs there, and you'd have a few beers and that with the boys, but then you try and save money, and you had good sight. It was like a flip of the coin. If you went on the complete polar opposite and you're there to run amok and just make quick money and then probably get kicked off the island, you would go to a couple of the other different places on the island. But if you were there to try and learn and develop the success of your career, you would stay on the right side of the fence and you just have a bit of fun, but mute half that fun to stay professional as well. And I was there probably all up about 4 to 5 years on and off, and I had amazing experiences. Like I said, I'm a scuba diver, so we went and did all that, heaps of skydiving, went and toured the whole of the Whitsunday, as well as working in an amazing establishment. And it just got to a point that I got sick of driving around the golf buggies and, not trying to get produce from different restaurants because we had run out or the plane hadn't come in because of bad weather. It was so diverse and trying to forecast to get produce onto the island 2 weeks ahead of schedule. And it was an amazing opportunity to work with the Oatleys and have the likes of Peter Gilmore and Matt Moran and Guillaume and a couple of the leading chefs from all over Australia come in and join us for the ballets and the Audi race weeks. So we were very, very, very fortunate in that aspect to be exposed to that. Those styles of other alternate restaurants and restaurateurs coming to the island for these events, because if I was just sitting in at a standard restaurant in Melbourne, I probably wouldn't be exposed to that same uniqueness, which was a blessing.
That opportunity afforded, as you mentioned, some incredible events and connecting with some of Australia's most influential chefs. Do you have an event or story that stands out from one of those experiences? Well, there was the story that still probably sticks out there today, and I think it might have maybe Ali signed it off before he had finished up his time at Qualia about a couple of guest chefs. Let's just say driving golf buggies into expensive pools down at Pebble Beach. I'm not going to name names on that one, but I think it was more or less the hustle and the bustle of doing 300 covers and having the guest chefs come on, and it was more about the aftermath for the chefs that were working on those days on, oh my God, what's going to happen after the event? Because these guys, these larrikins are coming from Sydney and Melbourne. They're like, yeah, we're going to a pretty sweet island. We're just going to have a bit of fun. So they would have the groundwork done, and then it was all about, okay, what else can we do after the events happened, and go out to the nightclubs and get a little bit loose type thing. So those memories of being on a few balconies, late night chats and into the early morning type thing stick out quite vividly. The best event I feel that I can remember that we had done
was with Peter Gilmore. And I named that one out of the many that we had done because he's such a humble guy and he's so food focused, but down to earth and caring for all his staff, and the way he approaches food still to this day. Again, an incredible leader of the Australian culinary, and that's something that I look up to what I want to become. Still growing into my restaurant and into my role in Brisbane here. It was just. Yeah, hustle and bustle. You did the grind work, and then you partied afterwards.
Tell us about that period of time when you left the island.
Yeah, so I decided that, having a British passport is probably about time I go on the other side of the world, and had a little bit of a tiki tour around and see what else there was to offer me. I had always thought as a young lad that Tuscany would be amazing to go and see the mums and the dads rolling pasta in the streets, and just drinking great wine on the hillside, and having an amazing experience there. So we made it our first stop to be in Italy, and I worked in I took over a little trattoria in Siena, which is a beautiful spot. Very close to Florence there. We were living in the restaurant, above the restaurant, so everything that happened downstairs we could hear, and there was pretty much no day off because it was summer season, and it's a tourist destination, and but it was so good an eye opener to what else was out there, and gave me a little, almost like a homely resemblance, because it was a small township in Italy there, and gave me some ownership. I didn't get much chance to actually go and be Dora the Explorer and go up the far north or too far south. We did tick off a lot of things at touristy as you would, but it was more or less about trying something different before going over and doing the whole big OE, I guess. We ate at some amazing restaurants after we had left Siena, and then we got that call up going, oh my God, we're a bit broke now, so we need to go back and do something else. So we actually headed straight back to Hamilton Island. So that we finished off our last couple of years back on Hamo because we were broke as hell.
Tell us about the move to Brisbane.
Yeah, so after we just quickly got back to Hamo, we did a couple of years stint there. I had a great opportunity to work with Nellie Robinson in Sydney. Sydney being a place I'd never thought that I would live and work, because it's completely polar opposite from my mentality of, I guess, living and working a little bit more on a slower scale without that head spend of how much money do I have to earn to pay my rent. So I just did a quick stint back in Sydney at Nell Restaurant. Incredible. This is where it helped me learn a hell of a lot about more costings, P&Ls, because if you can survive in Sydney with a tasting menu and so oiled and well run, anything's possible, and that's a definite hats off to Nellie Robinson for being able to show that, and it's an open kitchen and give us that whole diversity of changing the menu. After I sort of said, right, I've had enough of Sydney, I bought an investment property here on the nicer side of the valley, Fortitude Valley. I was like, right, we've got to move back to Brisbane because we've got to start grounding ourselves a little bit. And my folks back in NZ, they were sort of like, can you stop moving? Because we can't keep up with you. You're around the world. Now you're back in Brisbane. Now you're in Melbourne. Now you're in Sydney. Just stay still for 5, would you? And I said, okay, I'll think about it. But there's no, you can't lock down a chef. It's just impossible until you actually purchase a property, and then you're indefinitely locked down for a while. So Brisbane. We got back, and I was working with the Ovlo Group, amazing group of people. But the problem for me with hotel groups is you're very limited to what you can and can't do. You get a good pay packet, but there's just too much control, and I was coming up with all these awesome ideas to create an amazing room service experiences. Getting the guests from the airport, putting them in an Audi or Teslas these days, and getting them straight to the restaurant, the Inchcombe, and getting them up to their room, and then doing in-person experience in their room and having like a degustation done in their room when they arrive. So really creative ideas to really boost the scene in hotels. But the problem was they just didn't want to do that type of thing. So I was like, well, I'm just going to keep my eyes peeled for what's to come. And little did I know, this beautiful establishment that I'm director and owner of now, everything was falling into place, Hucks, because I went to the opening where they'd just done a massive restorement on the property. They built a wine cellar, they built a terrace, and we've got a rooftop bar as well. And I was there at the opening, and I got this sense of something new and exciting on the horizon when I'd been invited by a close friend to come and look at the new Sebon. I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. Go there for a couple of drinks and a couple of snacks. But when I first walked through the door, it was like this breath moment. I was just like, holy hell, this is so amazing. There's so many diverse spaces. I just started planning in my head straight away. We could do this, we could do that. Oh my God, let's critique what this current owners were doing. And I was like, that I would like to have something like that. But any chef's desire is to hopefully own something on their own. But it is very, very hard to be able to make that achievable unless you've got some groundwork or something amazing comes up. And maybe I still pinch myself to this day that I'm so blessed with the foundation of what I've got here. So I went back to the hotel. I continued on pushing on as you do, and little did I know that the previous owners had actually were about to put the place into liquidation. It was just about to flop over. I don't know what happened there too much. There are still amazing people, but I was, and I got a lead to say, hey, Andy, we don't want to see it go under. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I don't have a big bank account. I've got dreams and aspirations, but I definitely don't have a big bank account. I've got a mortgage too. But okay, I'll meet the landlord and we'll have a chat and away we go. So I remember being the little token white Kiwi that I am, rocking up to the office, literally 5 people around me, and he's like, right, what have you got to offer? And I'm like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? But the way he's an analyst and he's helped build South Bank, and he's an incredible, humble landlord, but he's also my business partner. The way he went about it was phenomenal. He came into the Inchcombe silently. He ate the food. He sent a couple other people around me. He spoke to Scott. He spoke to Ian Curley. He did all these reference checks on me, and even my friends back in New Zealand he spoke to, and he really took me to the cleaner and exposed the man I am, and I had nothing to hide. I honestly was just all about the food and wanting to make something of myself, if that makes sense. So he put me back on the table and he goes, right, can you confront with the money, or do you want to, have you got a partner that would be interested? And I said, look, I'm actively looking, but at the time Melbourne was having bushfires, so, people like Ian Curley weren't going to be able to join in. To be able to build an establishment, you've got to have a lot of trust, a lot of faith and accountability, etc. So I said to him, look, I felt like I was in a poker game. I was like, right, my chips are on the table. I'm sorry, I haven't got the ace high. My luck's run out. I don't know if I can. I don't have that coin that you're after to be able to set it all up. I'm sorry, and it's going to be me. And I'm getting ready to, prop myself up off the chair, and so I sort of, be down and out about it, and probably go next door and have a beer, and count out on the opportunity that I was in my eyes I was going to miss out on. But Steve's wife and himself, they looked at me and said, no, we've checked everything out, and let's go in, let's go 50-50. And I said, holy hell, have I just run the jackpot in another format? Because this is incredible. I said, okay, all right, well, let's look at all the asset buys, go through all the formalities. Are we going to change the name? How are we going to boost this thing? What's the turnaround time? So this all happened so fast, Hucks, and this was in January whilst I was still working and paying the mortgage and everything at the other job. I was having to secretly, as most people would, go off and then try and make this happen, clean the kitchen, get that all up at spick and span, take out the turkey that was left from when they left on Christmas Day, and sort of start building the foundations to the restaurant. And a lot of people said, why didn't you change the name? Why? And I said, well, we had marketing already been previously done with Broadsheet, Career Mail, Urban List. They had just spent a lot of money sort of boosting it, and then the old people that were here, they just didn't continuate it on. So I'd be really stupid to then counterbalance that and change the name, and I've got all these glassware, the whole shebang. So I was just like, right, let's just get this engine running. So by I think it was the 17th of January, the contracts were signed. We were in on the 20th, and we were operational. I still remember this day because it's our anniversary for the business. Valentine's Day was our first night of celebration, and what way better to celebrate than having close to 100 on the cards, your business partner sitting down with his wife, and you're just letting everything just go for it. And we made a good cracking night of it. No broken plates, no smashed glassware, and had a rip roaring time. And we all left with smiles. And little did we know that, and it's still happening now, that good old C word was literally creeping around the corner. So we started with 12 staff, and then, like everyone else, we either close or you try and fight the fire, and we chose to fight on. And within, I think it was 3 weeks after that we opened, I was giving out notices to part-time staff and casual staff saying, I'm sorry, but maybe the world's against us, and COVID's here, and we're going to try and continue the business, but I'm having to give you this slip that says I don't have any work for you at the moment. That today was the hardest and toughest thing I've done, because all I wanted to do is make sure people had food in their mouth and a roof over their head. And I've got 80% of my staff are foreign as well, and I was just gutted, absolutely ruined by that.
What sort of positives have come out of sort of this period of time, having sort of started the business just before the pandemic, but now things have opened up again? Did it give you any sort of positives or things that you could work on during that time?
100%. I think the relentlessness, if I say, I'm a Kiwi, maybe, I don't know, as the bruteness in me that I learned from my father, my parents back in New Zealand, that toughness and the grit, that don't give up. We can fight through this. Look for community support the family that is supporting you, grow with the team, take any lows, learn from them, and take the highs and don't forget about them. And that's what we've done. We didn't go and we had people like Uber Eats and Deliveroo and going, okay, we're going to look after you, but we're going to take that 30% off you, and it's amazing. We'll do all the groundwork for you. And I said, well, that's not the model. And if my food got delivered in an Uber Eats bag and then it just looked like crap on the front of a doorstep of someone who's paying quite a bit of money, it makes us look shit. So I decided to jump on the old blower, use a bit of Kiwi ingenuity, speak to people like Peugeot, Citroën, dealerships who are French, and say, hey, look, your cars are sitting in your paddock doing nothing. I'm a French restaurant that's trying to stay afloat. Let's make a really good feel-good story, because there's a lot of negativity kicking around at the moment. And I want to team up with you. And can you give me two trucks? And they're like, yep, no problem. So we ended up creating that diversity within the business to actually deliver. We had to cap it. We had to do a 10K radius, because whilst the phones were going red hot, and I've got an FPOS machine, I've got the old penny on, and I'm knocking on people's doors, giving them their hot food. I had that feeling of achievement, ownership, and also making sure that we had enough fat in the business just to pay the rent that needed to be paid, but also put a roof over some of the staff's head that stayed on with me. So we didn't know, like everyone, when this was going to stop, start, but you had to just diversify. And I was very blessed that we thought about this whole connection and to still support the community. We didn't shut our door once, which is in such an incredible, humble feeling. Now that we are, I think, we've got about a 20% gap still to go. But when we look back on it, I think that's an achievement in that aspect.
Tell us a little bit about your food and what you're doing there.
So at the moment, you go from the whole COVID side of things and some feel-good stories, and then some obviously negative stories and businesses closing and things collapsing. We obviously went through the whole floods at the start of the year, which was very impactful to where we are now. We're very back of house orientated and cost controlling at the moment, and I speak probably for a lot of businesses in that aspect. Whilst the flavors, the forefront of the business is all about the customer and the guest experience, it's more pivotal and more important than ever to really know your costs and to work so close with local producers and suppliers and work out where you can cut out that middleman to having some great produce on the plate, and then show that in the restaurant. So a great example is French restaurant. You need to have a creme brulee on the menu, Andy. Like you can't be French and not have a creme brulee. And I said, well, I'm a Kiwi actually. I've got French. I've been trained in French, but I can because I own the business and I'm going to do it differently. So while we pissed off a few people, but I said, right, I'm going to do a creme brulee, but we're going to do a savory version. So we ended up doing a sweet corn and buckwheat creme brulee. We serve it in a scientific Petri dish, and we serve it with scampi, saltbush, and textures of seeds and grains on it, and then we put a bit of French caviar. So we got a little bit of and it's one of the photos I sent to you earlier on, but we got a little bit of a kickback about that. But it almost put a statement on who we are and what we're trying to be. So at the moment we're going a bit old school. We've got tête de cochon, so we're going back to the really gastronomy days, and furthermore looking at that cost control, but having an amazing product that, yes, it takes a lot more time to break down and fundamentally make, but I'm being able to teach my some of the younger chefs that are coming through the Cordon Bleu, TAFE, and Queensland apprenticeship scheme to utilize different cuts to make an amazing product to tell the story at the table. At the moment, we're using a lot of local produce, Brisbane Valley quail, getting tea smoked, and instead of using à l'orange for duck, we're using that on the quail. We've got an amazing red claw, which should be a really sustainable, incredible product we should be able to get all the time here in Brisbane, but we can't. So I drove to Bow Desert, found a larrikin that just having a bit of fun. He's made these massive ponds, and he's harvesting red claws. So I said, right, I want you. And he's now in Essa, Bloom, and a couple other good restaurants here in Brizzy. And just driving out and looking at these niche little pockets to grab an amazing product, putting that French twist on it, and sending it out the door.
What surprised you about running your own restaurant?
That the mentality of being a chef is fine, but you've got to wear so many different hats. And I had to learn that very quickly. Now we have Sebon, which we can hold 35 in the restaurant, but I've got a wine bar called Le Bon Bar. I've got my cellar that we can hold 30 in. I've got a terrace that can hold standing 60. And then I've got a rooftop called Ooh La La, which my business partner is very bold. And he goes, hey, can we hurry up and build the rooftop bar in the middle of COVID? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's just do that as well. So we weathered the storm when we built that bad boy up there as well, which is an amazing, and it reminds me of Melbourne. It's very eclectic and it's sort of hipster, and it's small, and but it does the job, and it's another little beautiful part of the Sebon story, because people go up there, have a glass of champagne before they come down into the restaurant, or vice versa. So that's really cool. But back to your question, is I had to quickly understand the fundamentals of being a young business owner, the accounting side, but also the mentoring of the front of house staff, and not just be maybe a little bit arrogant and stubborn and go, right, but I'm a chef, I just need to work back a house, because that's where everything unravels. So I've set up more procedures very carefully within the business model to be able to now show face out the front, be present, take wine to tables and enjoy the industry for what it is. Because if I get myself stuck in the kitchen too much, then I could completely forget about what the front house needs and what the business needs to grow. And that's really, really super, super important to me right now, is that growth, and how do we go from point A to point B to point C really quickly, but in a controlled mannerism, and show my what I call my family, my employees, that I'm not just a chef in the back. I am the director. I am your mentor to help you guys.
Andy, you're part of this amazing evolution that's happening in Brisbane. What do you love about what you do?
That not one day's the same. There's so many different aspects to the industry that just keep that fire in the belly going. Talking to producers, suppliers, seeing happy people come through, mentoring young chefs of the journey that I've had and helping them get to where they want to go. There's always different challenges, like we spoke about, the staffing, trying to get those people through the doors. It's just so rewarding, but yet satisfying. But then you can have your moments when you're like, oh my God, what am I doing to myself? But there's just lifting. It's always been lifting, and I've been here now 2.5 years, going through a bit of everything, I call it. But I'll never change a thing, because I feel that this is what I'm here for. The next couple of months, who knows? But if we have that key focus and what we're trying to do, and give that customer and create that family environment, then we're going to hopefully succeed in what we want. But Brisbane itself is just incredible. It's growing. I do call it my second home, my home away from home. And I'm very lucky and privileged to be a part of the growing hospitality scene. There's amazing operators out there. I lean on them for support. I talk to like-minded people like Jack from Bloom, who's stepped out in a nutshell to do his thing out in Boona. We've got neighbours that we support and look after, the guys at Clarence, which I used to work with, a couple of them. So it's just rewarding. There's, I guess, a couple of things that the hospitality industry needs to look at internally, and we need to rely on some of those bigger mentors to help this government, the federal body and the state body, bring it all together, because tourism and hospitality is a big part of what makes Australia. I've just started a program within Sebom for my team called Practice What You Preach. I believe that this is a key aspect and a strong way I can give back to them, without them being poached out in the auction, what I call an auctioneer's market out there at the moment, where people are throwing around money left, right and centre. And I want to teach them that it's not always about the money. We pay by the award, of course, and we give out more where need be. But I want them to know what Scotty and Ali taught me is why are we doing this for? I didn't get into this game or the business for the money side of it first and foremost. I got into it for the enjoyment of what I love about food, wine and experiences. So the practice what you preach concepts, and hopefully, Nanushka and Matt from Broadsheet might do a plug on it. I'm not too sure, but it's not about that. It's about giving young people the availability to use my cellar on a Monday night. They take full ownership. Now, if I ask these guys, right, you need to start up a cafe tomorrow, we're going to give you the key. Having this piece of paper only means so much. Knowing the fundamentals of how a small business operates is the crucial part. The P&Ls. How much does it cost for you to open that door? What is the breakdown of the food? How many bums on seats do you need to make that break-even point? And unfortunately, a lot of these apprentices that are coming through the system, they don't know those fundamentals. So if I can help guide them with that and give them an opportunity to run their own pop-up in the cellar, and they have that break-even mark, and if they go over that, they sell some more cocktails, they get excited about it, they upsell, and if they make profit, then they can keep that profit. That's my gesture to them, to be able to take ownership and feel proud. And I can't compete against big operations in terms of the money side of things. What I can do is I can flip the coin, and I can make sure that I have respect and love and enjoyment in my own business. So I thought that's quite an interesting one to tell you about, Hucks, is these are problems that we're facing, but how can we cement staff into an amazing establishment? People do leave, don't get me wrong, but how do we fix these problems is, I guess, I'm trying to figure out, and I don't have all the answers, but I hope that more people stand up, and there's more recognition for food businesses that need support. I'm not asking for handout of money. I don't think that's the case. I think it's, how do we get back to what it used to be like? How do we bridge those gaps?
Well, Andy, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, and look forward to hearing more about these initiatives that you're creating, and also what you're creating in Brisbane there. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon. Brilliant.
Hey, thanks a lot for letting me be a part of your amazing podcast. It's an complete honour. We're going to continue igniting the flame and fueling the fire and just doing what we love, mate. And people like you make it an absolute pleasure to make us do what we do.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.